So the NFL now has a new overtime rule, which is, I think, good. To me, this is definitely a good thing. One of the issues is it seems like everybody has their own idea for what the perfect NFL overtime should be, and no two people have the same exact idea. So, of course, whatever gets come up with, people are going to dislike. Because it's not their idea, right? But I like this, I think, as a whole. That I have a better idea in my head? Sure. But I still think this is good because, I think it's more interesting. Quite frankly, that should be a big factor in making these decisions, is what is more fascinating, what are the fans going to like more. It's an entertainment product at the end of the day. So I think it's, quite frankly, more entertaining when you have a good game that's going to overtime. Well, let it last a little longer. Why not? It's only in the playoffs, so it's not like we're going to add too much wear and tear on their bodies. So I'm personally a fan of that perspective for sure. I've seen some weird comments, and I've seen this from several places, people talking about how, well, now defense doesn't matter even more so. In my opinion, this makes defense matter more because both teams have to, defend, right? Everyone kept saying, well, the Bills could have defended, the one that it seems like kind of caused this whole thing to happen was the Bills-Chiefs game, and people kept saying with the Buffalo Bills, well, they could have just gotten a stop, right? In overtime, it wasn't like they were screwed. And of course, I've always said, I don't think that losing the coin toss means that you're going to lose the game. I just think, as a whole, we probably should find a way to make it that you don't get a huge advantage in the NFL simply by winning a coin flip. We should probably try to take that out of the equation if we can. So that's why I like this. But anyways, that's what people say. It's like you could have just played defense. Well, the thing I always kind of go back to is, why didn't the Chiefs have to play defense? If defense matters, how come defense didn't matter for Kansas City in that game? Would they have been able to make a stop? Probably not. At least we don't know, and we never got to see that. So I think another thing that people are going to point out is the obvious. Well, what happens if, again, we'll use those same teams, the Chiefs win the coin toss, they go first, score a touchdown, the Bills score a touchdown, now the Chiefs go and get a field goal, Chiefs win the game, everyone still complains about the Chiefs getting an extra possession. I don't know if people will complain that much about it. Maybe someone will, sure. But I think the difference is that there's an inherent advantage for both teams now, the team that went first and the team that went second. So the advantage of winning the coin toss becomes a lot smaller because obviously, if you go second, it's similar to college football now, where you get the knowledge of knowing how many points you have to score. So, for example, if the Buffalo Bills went second, they would know they needed a touchdown. And so if it was a fourth down, they would go for it because they need the touchdown, and they wouldn't just kick a field goal. Whereas if you're down 3, then maybe you make sure that you just kick the field goal. And if you get a stop right away, then all you need is the field goal to win as opposed to just tie. So there's that inherent advantage you get going second, which is why I think this is also a fascinating situation. And it makes me wonder, what would you choose here? I would think I would still choose to go first. In my head, I think that makes the most logical sense is you go first, and so that way you have the opportunity for the extra possession. I still think that would be the preferred outcome, but I can certainly see the logic behind going second because you do get the knowledge of just knowing how many points you need on that possession, which is definitely a big benefit. I've also, there's also the other thing where it doesn't necessarily mean that both teams, if both teams score touchdowns, then it continues because the second team could go for 2. If you're the Bills, you could take that chance and go for the 2-point conversion, which I don't really have an issue with, quite frankly, either, because I think that's exciting. And I think that, hey, if you're going to take that chance, then you can take that chance. And then, at least if you're a fan of that team, you can kind of after it say, well, we could have gone for 2. We chose not to. We chose to give them the extra possession. That's the other factor in all of this. So that's why I think things get interesting. And again, that's the point of sports, right? It's an entertainment product. I just think that this is fascinating, and I think it's good. And quite frankly, the NFL, I feel like the overtime had to do something. I know that the playoff stats are a small sample size, but it really does go to show how often the team that won the coin toss won the game in overtime in the playoffs. And it didn't happen quite as much in the regular season, but it was an advantage by a coin toss. Let's try to make that advantage less. Now, my preferred outcome, I still stand by. I wish that we just didn't have the coin toss, period. I wish there was some other way to decide who gets the ball first, say the home team just automatically gets the ball first. Something like that I'd probably prefer. But I think this is a step in the right direction, and I definitely think that this is something that should help the NFL product as a whole. And again, it makes things more interesting. I mean, if you're someone who isn't a Chiefs fan, didn't you just want to see Josh Allen get the ball again? Wouldn't that just have been fun to let the game continue? That's more exciting. And I think about every other sport, basically, of, like, for example, basketball, overtime is awesome. You love overtime. Hockey, I love playoff overtime in hockey is like the best thing you'll ever see. It's incredible. And then in overtime in football, I just don't know if it really was matching the hype. So adding something like this, I think, will allow it to do stuff because it makes it a little bit more of like just a game again. I think it makes it more like football. I think it makes defense matter more. I really don't see the negative here. I only see some positives. So it's a fascinating thing. One thing I've heard that to me would be crazy, but what I've heard is that some teams might, when they go first, they might go for 2 if they score a touchdown immediately. So like if you're to, again, using that example, if the Chiefs scored an opening drive touchdown in overtime, they could consider going for 2, so that way the Bills wouldn't have a chance to go for 2 themselves and win it. But I think that would be an insane strategy because if you miss it, the opposing team can just kick the extra point to win the game, whereas if you get it, the other team still can go for 2 to tie it. So I think that would be a very bad strategy, but it's something people have talked about, and that's kind of why things are a little bit interesting as well, is this is a new era in football, kind of. There's a new thing that we haven't looked at the numbers and we don't have data on, and we kind of have to just take guesses a little bit and feel it out, which I always find interesting in sports when this kind of stuff happens. I mean, I guess you could kind of look at numbers of, okay, well, how often do teams tend to score in overtime, and maybe kind of try to use that data a little bit, but it's a new world, and we don't know exactly how it works, and that's interesting to me. So yeah, I think I've said the word interesting about 1,000 times, but one other thing I wanted to make sure I mentioned in this video is I feel like as a whole, people are very against change, especially in sports. I see people do not like sports changing, which to some degree makes sense. We watch sports because we love sports. We don't want to see them mess with it. Keep it the same because it's awesome as it is. And that's true, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to keep evolving and make it better. You should always be working on making the product better. And I think the first thing that, if you're not a fan of this and you don't like it for whatever reason, what I'll say is, like, let's just give it a shot. Like, me personally, I didn't like it at first when they moved the extra point back from the 2-yard line to where it is now. I didn't like that at first, but in hindsight, it's like, yeah, that actually made the game more exciting. That was the right call there. So I'm a fan of it now, whereas I didn't like it at the time. And once that happened, I kind of had more of an approach of, let's just try it. Let's see how things go. Let's give it a shot. Even when they decided to make pass interference a challengeable rule, I wasn't a fan of that at all. I didn't like it, and I said I don't think it was going to work, but I also said, hey, I'll give it a shot. Let's try things, see how it works, and after 1 year, it sucked, and then we didn't try it anymore. That's kind of the correct mindset, and it's just in the playoffs, so it's not going to change any regular season stuff. Just the games that matter, it'll just make it a little bit more fair, which I think is cool. That's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.